This is the 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Pellizzaro, episode number 34.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzaro.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jeff Pellizzaro, founder of the 18 Strong Podcast, physical therapist and golf fitness professional, and I want to thank you for listening to the 18 Strong Podcast today. We've got a pretty cool show with Dr. Craig Davies. He's a chiropractor and strength coach to a lot of the guys on tour, working with guys like Hunter Mahan, Matt Every, Kevin Chappelle, Graham Dillette, bunch of different guys. Has worked with Tiger Woods in the past, and he's going to give us a little bit of an inside look at what it's like living on tour, traveling on tour, not just from the fitness professionals' point of view, but also he's going to take us into what the golfers go through on a weekly basis. You know, living-wise, as far as hotels, travel, eating, workouts, that type of stuff. So he's got some great stories to tell us. And then he's also going to go into, we talked a lot about Matt Every. When we did this interview, it was about a week after Matt had won the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill. And this is the second time that Matt won. And so Craig goes through some of the stuff that they've been working on for the past year. You know, some of the things that Matt has struggled with and how they've worked through some of those different issues on his swing and his workouts. And they're very relevant to what you guys are probably doing and working on in your game as far as sequencing and, you know, working on the swing and stuff like that. So stay tuned because Craig has a lot of great information for you. And also, you can check out a great picture that we have of Craig working with some of the guys in his home gym, and it's the cover of the podcast episode. So head over to 18strong.com and take a look at that. See if you can recognize which guys are in the picture. Before we get started into the episode, I do want to just say a huge congratulations to Jordan Spieth and his whole team there for such a stellar performance at the Masters this year, 2015, just this past weekend. I think anybody that watched that tournament from end to end can say that Jordan Spieth just plays and executes with such composure and really kind of epitomizes to me what 18 Strong is. And I want to give a huge shout out to his fitness professional and trainer, Damon Goddard, who was kind enough to let me interview him a long time ago when this podcast was just getting started. So Damon was episode number 5 on the 18 Strong Podcast, so make sure you go back and listen to that if you haven't had a chance yet. And we talk about Jordan, and we talk about some of the stories that he has, and just, you know, kind of project that this kid is going to be something very special, and obviously that's exactly how it's playing out. In fact, I just sent Damon a message this afternoon, congratulated him on everything, all the success from this past weekend, and to ask him if we could get him on the show again as a repeat to give us some stories on, you know, the whole weekend, the whole experience. I know he was there. He saw Jordan sink his putt on 18, gave him a big hug as he came off the green. So I'm sure he's got a ton of great stories for us. And you can hear Damon's first episode number 5, by going to 18strong.com. Just search for Damon in the search bar. And you can get all the other episodes that we've done on the show just by going to 18strong.com. And of course, while you're there, don't forget, get your free gift, 5 yards in less than 5 minutes, just by clicking on the little link on the right-hand side. And that's going to give you immediate access to a downloadable ebook. We're also working on some videos to coincide with the ebook, which anybody that has gotten the ebook already, I will go ahead and send that out to you once we do get that all up and recorded. And by doing that, you also get on the email list, which gives you basically direct access to me. You can send me questions. As anybody that's on the email list knows, I will get back to you. I try to get back to everybody as soon as possible when questions are sent my way. So I do promise to do that as often as I can. And I thank you guys for all of your questions. It really helps me kind of create what's going on the show and finding new guests and all that good stuff for the future. So if you haven't followed us on Twitter, 18 Strong on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and please continue to share this stuff on your social media platforms. I love seeing you guys share it because it really brings exposure to the show and gets the message of all these great professionals out to the rest of the golf world. So enough of me rambling. Let's get on to Dr. Craig Davies. All right. Hey, Craig, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you bet, man. I know we've been kind of texting back and forth, trying to put together some times, and I'm really excited to finally get you on the show and kind of share your story and everything that you're doing with your PGA players and everything you've got going on. So for the listeners, we've got Dr. Craig Davies on the line here, and Craig has a lot of history working with professional golfers, tour players. He's a chiropractor. So just a little bit of his, background from my end, as I do my homework on everybody. I have a little background on you, Craig. He's a strength and conditioning coach on the PGA Tour as well as a chiropractor. He's a founding member of the International Golf Performance Council. Been a keynote speaker for several different summits, presentations, different seminars. The author of the book Golf Anatomy, and has worked on, I think, is it the past 2 Ryder Cup and President's Cup teams?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've worked. I can't remember which Ryder Cups and President's Cups, but probably 6 or 7 of those team events now. It's been fun.
That's awesome. All right, so I've just kind of given a little bit of background on you, Craig, and so I'm going to have you kind of take over. Give us a little story of you, so we get to know you on the tour life, off the tour life, and then I want to know more about the International Golf Performance Council.
Okay, so I'll just kind of give a little sort of a brief summary of how I guess got to where I'm at right now. After going to school in Canada at the University of Western Ontario for my undergraduate in kinesiology and then biology as well, I went over to Toronto and did my chiropractic program at the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College. And it was at that time, sort of around 99, 2000, that I really began working with a lot of different athletes. And some of them, were more the weekend warriors, and some of them were the younger junior athletes. But working with them on their, at that time, predominantly strength and conditioning, some of their basic cardiovascular programming. And that was sort of my job to pay my bills as I went through chiro school, because I didn't have the money and I needed to make some dough. And while I was doing that, I sort of forged my background on what I believed at that time anyway, as far as how the body should move and function. And I was very fortunate to work with some really phenomenal people in Toronto who were either, chiropractors or physios, strength coaches. We had just a really good support system there, and everyone was pretty open to answering and asking questions and really kind of pushing each other to be a little bit better. So while I was there, working in Toronto while I was in school, that's where I sort of started combining the therapy and the training to try to maximize my ability to make people move more efficiently while, bringing in some of the nutritional components, and trying to figure out sort of the cell biology and how everything was working together. But from there, I was fortunate. I met Sean Foley in the early 2000s. He's a golf coach, obviously, from up in Canada. And we kind of worked the system. We went out, we worked with junior players and collegiate players the same, traveled mini tours together, worked on, at the time, the nationwide tour, which is now theweb.com, and worked our way out to being on tour and working with a ton of players together. It's been a really fun trip on the way. So that's kind of a brief summary of some of the things I was doing to get to where I'm at now. But, at this point in time, I'm really just spending most of my time out on tour, working with all the athletes I have the fortunate to work with. And I'm really happy that I get to work with a lot of really great guys. And when I'm in Orlando, I get to work with some cool juniors and mini tour players. So it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. And of course, we love name dropping here on the 18 Strong podcast. So if you can share with us a couple of the players that you are currently working with, and then maybe a couple of players that you've worked with in the past.
So right now I've got a great roster of guys right now. They all get along. Last week's winner, Matt Every, I've been fortunate to work with him for a little bit of time. Graham Dillette and Hunter Mahan, Kevin Chappell, Cameron Tringali, Nick Taylor, who won in the fall. Those are some of the guys that I'm working with now. But I've been really lucky. I've got to work with some Europeans like Justin Rose and Americans like Tiger, Anthony Kim. Just a lot of really great guys from all different parts of life. So it's been a cool trip.
Yeah, that's quite a roster, and we're definitely going to talk a little bit about Matt Every and the experience of this past week and him winning the second time at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and just, kind of everything that surrounded that whole experience for you guys. But let's go into, tell us a little bit more about the International Golf Performance Council, what it is, when it started, and kind of what the mission of it is.
Yeah, so it's, the International Golf Performance Council, the online home is found at tourcouncil.com. And it's what it is it's a conglomerate of different professionals who work out on tour in different aspects of golf performance. So you'd have guys like Dr. R. Sapaya, who you might see on the Golf Channel, who works with a ton of players on their sort of their medical and internal biochemistry to create optimization that way. We've got guys like James Lights from the Full Swing Science, Dr. Troy Van Beesen, who's working with his players from a manual therapy standpoint, and David Orr, who's a short game coach, Dr. Gio Valianti on the mental coaches, all these guys who are working behind the scenes to improve the performance of these athletes out on tour. And kind of what we thought was we'd get all of us together and start putting information down in one place. So it was like a home that people could find ideas, techniques, just concepts that we're working with out on tour. And it's a way for Joe Smith, who's a country club member or a elite junior player, collegiate player, to start getting information that they can then bring to their coaches of different levels and start creating and fostering different concepts for them to start working on. The idea would be 5 years from now that through the relationships that we have, that we can really challenge what is being accepted as the norm for improving a player's golf performance. So right now, we still have guys who go out after shooting a bad round while they're tired and they've been on the course for 7 hours and they pound balls for 2 more hours. And they think they find it. And then they show up the next day and they realize at that point in time that they've completely changed their movement patterns to create the ball flight they were looking for while they were tired.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense. So we're trying to find ways of showing our elite players that doesn't work, and we've done a good job so far on tour of slowly starting to create that message, and these players are understanding that certain things that they've done just because everybody else has done it doesn't mean it's right. And from there, we're hoping to filter that down by working with some of these international programs that we're affiliated with, some of the elite players that we get to work with through that, and kind of change what the next generation of player does to perform so that we don't have as many injuries as we're having now. We're having more time efficiency. Guys get to hang out and play with their children more because they're not wasting 4 hours of time at the course when they could be doing things in half the time if they're more efficient with it. We're really just trying to push the boundaries of what is considered normal activities in order to improve your performance, right? The second part of what we want to do, besides obviously showcasing who the people are who are working behind the scenes out on tour, is create an environment where the charitable aspect of this company that we're kind of building is going to help with children, disadvantaged children, either through increasing the funding available for them to have good nutrition in school, educate them about the importance of movement in school, because obviously right now there's a lot of school boards. I know the one in Orange County where I'm located at this time is taking out recesses, is taking out gym classes out of the curriculum. And I just can't understand. I've never seen a study that showed a lack of movement resulted in increased learning capabilities. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's completely messed up. And, our lymphatic system, which is, part of our ability to keep ourselves healthy, is based and functions best on movement, because it doesn't have its own way of circulating without the skeletal muscles and whatnot creating that flow. So if we're going to be sitting there all day and not moving, our lymphatic system is not going to be taking things out and shuttling it around. So we're going to get children who are sicker, who are, it's just a mess. It's a mess. Anyway, so part of our goal is to make a dent into that anyway.
I mean, I think the whole concept of this thing is fantastic. That's one of the reasons why this podcast was started and the website 18strong.com was started, was as I was going and looking for more information for myself to make myself a better physical therapist and trainer, and looking for other resources for my clients and just other golfers in general to be able to put out there. I found that there really wasn't much out there for, like you said, for Joe Smith, the guy that is a country club golfer, but he wants to play at his best. He wants to do all the things the right way, train hard. He wants to, practice as well as he can. But there really weren't very many resources. Now, I think, the guys over at TPI are doing a great job. They're putting up a bunch of information, and they've done a fantastic job of creating awareness around the whole golf fitness aspect and tying in, the mental game. And you've got guys like Justin Tupper over at Revolution Golf who are doing stuff, bringing in great specialists and professionals, and Dr. Gio's on there as well. So I just kind of found that there was also a lack of professional information, and I love the idea of all you guys collaborating, the guys on tour that are working behind the scenes, putting all these resources together, and then to tie in the charitable aspect of it too is just a phenomenal thing. So congratulations for that.
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully as this continues to grow, we can make a huge impact, on both of those sort of missions that we have. And you're right, the guys at TPI, Greg and Dave and Lance Gill, all those guys have done, I think, an awesome job of creating. In essence, they've helped create the concept of golf fitness for a lot of people. A lot of individuals wouldn't even have had the idea of what golf fitness could be if it wasn't for TPI. And I think there's a huge scope that isn't encompassed or satisfied by TPI. But I don't know necessarily that that's the point of it. I think for them, they've really been able to package it and put it out there to the masses. It's global. There was nothing like that before then. There's a lot of smaller companies like Fit for Golf and whatnot that I went to back in the early 2000s and late 90s to get some information, but nothing at the scope of what they've done. And those guys have really tried to push, I think, the envelope in their own brands to continue to build it and make it better. So I've got nothing but kudos for all those guys at TPI. They've done a fantastic job.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about what I know the audience wants to hear. Give us an idea of what the tour life is like a little bit. First, I want a little perspective for, what the golfers experience when they get there for a week. And I'm, a little bit of the glitz and the glamour, as well as, what's the fitness stuff look like and their playing schedules. But then also for you guys, we see the golfers and they're driving their fancy Mercedes or whatever it is. But what's it like? Take us to a week of the tour for you as well.
Yeah, so from a player perspective, I think one of the aspects that's not really appreciated enough by people who are watching on TV, you hear a lot of comments about, these guys who are playing for millions of dollars and they shouldn't be crying and whining about this or that. But the reality is, these guys, more than any other sport, if you take basketball, you take soccer or hockey, half your games are at home. Whereas these guys are lucky if they have one, and they might squeak in two. If you look at some of the guys in Dallas who can play in Fort Worth as well as Dallas, but they're on the road the rest of the time that they're playing. So they're sleeping in different beds, different areas. Whether a lot of the guys are really trying to pay attention to their nutrition, and some of the places we go to. If you go to San Diego, you have a ton of great options for food. Everything seems to be organic. There's a lot of variance in what type of food's available. And then you go to New Orleans, and if you don't eat fried food or shellfish, you have no chance. Right? So, it's what people don't understand is just the very basic, simple things. There's dining available to these guys in the clubhouse, and sometimes it's quite good food, and at other times, to be honest, it's pretty bad. So like small details like that, I think people underestimate the importance of. A lot of these guys are waking up, they're trying to bring families out and traveling with their kids. So they're renting houses. When you rent a house, you never know what kind of bed you're going to have until you show up. So some guys, don't kind of respond well to an overly soft bed. Next thing you know, their back's all seized up on them from trying to sleep. And there's a lot of details that go into it from a performance standpoint that are very challenging for someone who's living on the road in a different city every single week. There's obviously some pluses to it. You show up, these guys do get a courtesy car pretty much every week. There's only 1 or 2 weeks where I think it's a bit of a struggle to get a car. Great cars. The ones who've been on tour for a long time, they know where they're eating. They know the hotels they're staying at. They have all those details kind of figured out. But for the young guys who really don't know if they're playing from a week-to-week basis, or they just got in off of the web.com Q school, these guys are struggling. They're just hoping to play. They don't know any of the courses. They're grinding it out Monday, Tuesday. They have to sit on the bench on Wednesday because the Pro-Am they're not in. So they're just kind of out there doing their skill training. If they make it through the weekend, they get to play through Sunday, and then they have to play the next week right away. They need to be in the next city practicing on Monday. So it's sort of a nonstop whirlwind tour for a lot of these guys, and they might play 4 events in a row. They might play 1 event, not play for 4 weeks because they're not into those tournaments. It's kind of all over the place. The top level players, what doesn't get appreciated, I don't think, is all of the requirements, whether it's media, sponsor, value programs that these guys have to do, that on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, even Thursdays sometimes after they're done playing, they're running around and going to these different events just to meet the requirements of some of the contracts they sign. So I know they get paid for a lot of that stuff, but that's, there's no guaranteed contracts out here, so they got to make money when they can make money.
Right.
For us, from the trainer, the therapist standpoint, we have a unique role and situation out here. So, we don't have anywhere on site that we get to eat. So that's a different story that I'm not going to get into. But, for the most part, most of us show up about 4:30 in the morning from Tuesday, Wednesday through Friday. And then we hope that our guys play well enough that we don't have to be there early on Saturday and Sunday, but you never know. And most of our days end at 8. And so we're kind of going through from 4:30 to 8 or 9 at night with, the odd break in between where we try to jump off site and get some food. But, for the most part, we're going for 12 to 14 hours sometimes.
And are you guys primarily doing a lot of your work in the trailer? And I know with you being a chiropractor and a strength and conditioning coach, I'm sure you're doing a lot of hands-on stuff as well as, and probably even more so hands-on stuff than the physical training stuff.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the player that I'm working with, how long I've been with them, and, what part of the season we're at, as far as what percentage of time's devoted to their own active fitness versus more passive therapy. But for the most part, when we're at a nice location, if we're down in Doral or if we're in Washington at Congressional, we have a great fitness facility available to us that we kind of get to use, and it's nice to step out of the fitness trailer for a week and sort of get into a different surroundings. But to be honest, we're really fortunate that they do have the trailer that goes around from tour event to tour event, which for those who don't know, they drive these 18-wheelers around. There's a fitness one and a therapy one. The fitness one, both of them expand out sort of like an RV would. And there's a pretty decent gym that is housed inside those trailers, and they're at each of the events from Tuesday to Sunday. And that's where I would say most weeks, 70% of the guys are in there doing their warm-ups pre-round. They're doing their training programs out of there. And the therapy, there's a therapy trailer as well, which is staffed by people who are on sort of the salary from the PGA Tour. And then us who are sort of private consultants, we get, fortunately, to work mostly out of the locker room. They set up an area for us, and it is getting busier and busier every year in there.
I bet it is.
Yeah, this wraparound schedule is not allowing guys to have a long enough off-season to recover from the previous season. So it was really interesting this year with being the second year that they've been doing it. The guys are banged up. As of, January, you still saw guys with lingering injuries. And by February, there's a significant number of players who have, pretty decent injuries that they're going to deal with now. And there's no time off. So it'll be interesting to see as we get to the major portion of the schedule into the FedEx playoffs, how guys are able to continue playing at a high level. And when is it that they make the decision to change how they're going to form their schedule into these fall series events and overseas events in the off season. Because I just can't see guys being able to maintain that schedule for an extended period of time.
Yeah, it just seems like it's gotten pretty ridiculous, and it's almost like there's no end to the golf season. I mean, there's always a tournament going on somewhere where, recognizable names are playing in these things, and it just seems like this past year, me personally kind of recognizing, wait, when did these guys ever take a break? And I would imagine it does. It shows up in the overuse injuries and stuff like that. And, you can only perform at your highest for so long, and nobody ever plays at 100%, as they say. But, that takes a toll after quite a while. So, I would just imagine that they've got to change something in the schedules. And going back to the buses or the trailers that you were talking about, I actually had a chance to go tour those a little bit. We had a tournament here in St. Louis at Belle Reve. It was a Champions Tour event. I believe this was last year. And I was able to go and kind of get a private sneak in the trailers. And it's amazing how those things expand out and how good of a gym they really have in that place.
Yeah, for a traveling gym, it's pretty solid. I know I've talked to a couple of the guys on the tour staff because we're looking at the next couple of years of revamping that system, and they're trying to find a trailer that extends lengthwise now. They've talked about putting a sort of like a 2-story trailer together that expanded up, so allow maybe an area upstairs where we can do more of the mat and body work, and then downstairs would be more of your lifting area. They're trying to keep adapting because more and more players are utilized. These young kids who come on tour now, training has been part of their lives since they were teenagers and young kids. So you go into every year, there's just more and more higher percentage number of players in the field who are utilizing the fitness equipment. And obviously space, it's very difficult to expand the space. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 3 or 4 years as we get more of these young sort of athletes out on tour, and what we can do from a space standpoint with the training levels. It'll be cool.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. The double-decker fitness bus, that'll be kind of funny.
Yeah, we'll see how the safety on that is.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the last week that you had and that your player Matt Every had. And I know, how long have you been working with Matt?
So I started initially working with Matt about 3 years ago today, and then, or not today, but 3 years ago at the Houston event coming up next week. We worked together for the summer of that season, and then he was fortunate enough to have an addition to his family with the birth of his first son. And so for him, he had to take a little bit of time off because, being a young dad, he never, there's no playbook on how to be a dad, right? Yeah. So he was trying to figure out how to manage time and do all that kind of stuff. So he wasn't able to continue with his training at that time. And so we kind of touched base again last year and reinstituted his training program. It was around the same time that he won at Bay Hill last year, because we recognized at that point that, last year when he won Bay Hill, he won it predominantly off of his short game and putting. He was just unbelievable. He's a fantastic putter. So he thought, for me to compete out here, it's going to be tough to make everything every week. And so he recognized the need to improve sort of his full swing or long iron drivers and what he was able to do and perform at those clubs. And so from that point, we started working. And really with Matt, he's a phenomenal athlete. He's an explosive athlete, much more so than you would expect if you just looked at him. He's actually very impressive in the gym. But what he struggled with was being able to reproduce a movement from one repetition to the next. And that was the same type of thing he experienced in his swing. From swing 1 to swing 5, there could be huge variation in what he was doing in order to make contact. So for us, a lot of what we've done is just really trying to help him understand from the feet up through the legs into the hips and pelvis how the body loads, how he should be moving, how he should be utilizing his feet, which, the feet is something that I don't understand how more coaches don't spend time on working their athletes and building the strength and building the mobility in their feet to be able to perform. But anyway, that's what we've done with Matt, and he's been super diligent with it. He's got a great coach out in Jacksonville, Jeff Frank, that he works with his off weeks to build up some of his athletic base and just some of his ballistic movements and strength as well. So it's been nice to have someone there to rely on, and together we've really been able to hone Matt in. And he's just someone who, he's a good guy who really works very hard at what he thinks is necessary. And he brought in Sean Foley at the same time to work on his swing, and kind of that allowed us to capture his movement increases with the swing sort of changes, and kind of we fed off each other and made sure that what I wanted him to do, Sean was able to kind of work with. And when Sean said, I need him to be able to do this, I kind of changed some of the program to fit that. And it's just been a nice fit for Matt. It's been really nice to see someone change their golf swing as much as he has yet to keep the basics there, right? Because he still obviously was a great player.
Right. So can you give us an idea of, what are some of the things that you do when you've got a guy who, from repetition to repetition or swing to swing has a little trouble honing in that same movement pattern? What are some of the things specifically that you work on, drill-wise or just movement-wise?
Yeah, so with Matt, he just had, a lot of areas when he tried to create a movement, he just had so many muscles firing. Everything was kind of firing at once to create a movement. So what we did is a combination of, a number of things. A lot of the movements, we really force him to slow down. He's very quick at everything. It's extremely difficult for Matt to move slowly. And so we forced him to move slow. And that way he was really able to understand as he would load, if he's moving from his left to his right, where is his weight shifting? Is it moving to his forefoot? Is it moving to his rear foot? Before he never had that understanding. So when we slowed it down, that's when his feel that he was aware of, not the subconscious part of it, but the actual awareness increased. And then from there, once he was able to do things at a very slow rate, we were able to add speed to it with slowly increasing that over time. We added in a lot of sort of your basic movement patterns, a lot of rolling patterns, challenging him, moving from kneeling to standing postures and chops and all that kind of stuff, where he wasn't able just to go from a low to high chop and go through that movement as aggressively as someone would without respect to the form. He had to be able to identify at each part of that movement, okay, where's the weight now in my foot? What is happening with my knee? So we really had to break things down just for him to become conscious of what his body was doing. And now, because he's done that for quite a while, we don't have to think about that anymore. His body is now able to understand it. We've done, whether it's taking things from PRI or whatnot to help him facilitate his pelvis better. It's been a combination of different things, but to be honest, the biggest thing was he had to move a lot slower initially.
Well, I think that's cool to point out that even these guys at the highest of levels, sometimes we just take for granted certain movements and we just assume that if it's looking right, that we're doing it right. But then you start to notice these little nuances in their patterns and things like that and realize, hey, he may not have total control over what's going on. And I think that Joe Smith, the average guy in the gym, this is definitely going to be a factor. And so, sometimes just slowing things down and, taking your repetitions and making sure that your tempos are right, your postures are right, makes such a big difference.
Breathing. These guys, whether it's the high-level athlete or, as you're saying, someone at home who's playing, 18 holes in his country club tournament or just likes to play on weekends, the breathing aspect is so important, and understanding how your diaphragm works and all those kind of things that traditionally just weren't even thought about from a training perspective. And I think, when you start bringing those types of concepts in and looking at how the breathing affects heart rate variability and then how the heart rate variability is affecting their performance over a longer period of time, those things, when they can see the changes, that I'm not measuring, it's some random innate objects measuring it, so it doesn't know what Matt's been doing. But when you start measuring those type of things and the player can see the differences, you can see his movements changing, it's a lot easier to buy into it. And the other thing that I think is pretty interesting is, you see these guys who rotate for a living doing the golf swing, and they don't do it very well. You break their rotational patterns down, whether you use 3D or just break it down to other patterns, and most of these guys don't rotate well. And that's something that a lot of people don't consider. Outside of playing golf, most of us don't go through that plane of movement, what we consider rotation, very often at all at home. And so just because you do your golf swing all the time doesn't mean you're going to be rotating nicely. And I think breaking down rotational patterns into very simple form and initially looking at joints and how each joint's moving, because a lot of times, as you know, sometimes the hips aren't moving, the ankles aren't moving properly, the foot's not able to move. And if all those things are blocked, restricted in motion, we're going to get a lot more stress throughout the rest of the body as other areas try to compensate to create what we consider rotation through our visual system. And I think a lot of guys at home who are just playing regular golf could really, benefit from learning how their body moves and what is capable of creating rotation throughout their body and what isn't.
Is there anything that you would suggest to the listeners that they could do to kind of check themselves on a few of these things and, see are they rotating properly, or where do they have some limitations?
Well, actually, if you look at the Tour Council website, Mark Blackburn did a little series on to check sort of like for the Joe golfer without doing a full assessment, by a therapist. He did a little rotation versus linear check that I think a lot of golfers could benefit from. He did kind of a whole 6 to 8 part series, I believe, on that.
Perfect.
Which was just kind of checking from, if I'm not mistaken, from ankles up to the head, sort of base joints, what was able to rotate and what isn't. So I think that would be a good resource. I think obviously TPI's got a lot of different things out there. But, for someone who's looking a bit more in depth, there's all kinds of different options, whether they look at DNS or, there's a lot out there. But I would look at Mark Blackburn's stuff for sure on the Tour Council site. Yeah,
I'll go ahead and link that up in the show notes page so everybody has the ability to go straight there and check it out. And I know he does a lot of great stuff with TPI and all those guys as well. So, we'll definitely put that up there.
Yeah,
all right.
Mark's the guy who's obviously instructed all over the world for a long time. So
yeah,
he's pretty good at what he does.
Yeah, he absolutely is. All right, Craig. So the 18 Strong podcast is, kind of dedicated towards the average golfer, the guy who's looking to make his game as good as possible. And we've all got our different definitions of what 18 Strong is. But I always like to ask my guests, when you hear the term 18 Strong, what does that conjure up in your mind? And then, since you are a guy who has experience with tour players, is there a guy or a story that you could tell that kind of epitomizes your definition?
I think from a very basic standpoint, if you're thinking 18 strong, you're looking at being able to start on the first tee and finish on the 18th green in a way that allows for maximal performance, right? 18 strong, whether that's mental acuity, whether it's your physical prowess, you want to be able to go through 1, 2, through 9, from 10 up to 18 and not have the lapses. And, you'll see some guys who are good 1 to 4 and they're good 15 to 18, but they're not getting in between because their nutrition isn't dialed in. They have these ups and downs and momentum flows in between that because they don't have the clarity because of some of their nutritional crashes. And then you have other guys who 8 holes into it, when they're walking Augusta, their energy is blown out because they're not used to walking, the holes. They're not used to walking the hills. Mm-hmm. So, I think if I look at my guys specifically, I'm going to kind of take this in a different way, actually, because obviously I was just saying how you're looking at someone who's able to compete each hole and the maximum capacity for that individual. But for me, the person I think sort of encapsulates this in a sort of a different aspect is Graham DeLette. And this is a guy who, he's a warrior. People don't realize he's struggled. He had back surgery about 5 years ago now. And that's when I met him as recovering from his back surgery. So he's played in certain tournaments in extreme high levels of discomfort. But recognizing that he's going to play in this discomfort, he's tried to do everything he possibly could in past years from a nutritional standpoint to decrease inflammation, pre-round, the night before, and during the round, trying to maximize his nutritional intake to make sure he doesn't have, those ebbs and flows of energy throughout the round. And this guy is able to go out there and battle from hole 1 to hole 18. Now he's pretty healthy, but back in the day when he was still coming back from that surgery, it was impressive to see a gentleman go out there and sort of be so far below what most people would think is their physical prowess and get it done at a level where he's competing and was considered to be one of the top couple ball strikers on the PGA Tour even at that time.
I'm a big Graham DeLette fan, and I actually didn't even know the background story about his back and his health issues, but he's just got that air about him when he's out there. You can tell that first he's a fit guy, but he just looks like he's having fun a lot of the times also. But, just looks like a guy that's enjoying the game, working hard, and, he gets the job done. I just really appreciate that about him.
Well, you know what? So that's perspective is everything, right? And, you look at Graham, so I'm probably going to completely get these years wrong, but let's just throw out 2010. end of 2010, maybe when he had his back surgery, give or take. So 2010, so that means 2011, he couldn't play. He tried to play a couple of tournaments and it just couldn't go. November 2011, so almost a full year afterwards, he still wasn't sure if he's going to be able to play golf again. And that's when I met him. He flew down to Orlando, and we hung out for a few days, took a look, and tried to figure out if there's anything that we could do to help him out. And what's cool is, that guy missed a year of his career, didn't think he'd potentially play golf again at this level. And when you're given that second chance to come back out, I think that's one of the reasons you see him enjoying golf as much as you do, is because for a while it was taken away from him. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, all of a sudden you come back and you're thinking, you know what, this is a pretty good gig and I'm really good at this job. So, I think for him, having the ability to look at it in a way that a lot of players haven't, it's just like, your best friend all of a sudden unfortunately passes away and you realize how good you had it with that person. Right. He's had that experience and now he's still able to live and enjoy and love the game that at one point he thought was taken away. So he's an awesome guy. What's cool about Graham, he's kind of old school with his shot making. He never had a full swing coach growing up, and he hits all these really cool shots that a lot of guys can't hit, whether it's low fades, high fades, low draws, high draws, these bombs. He can do it all. It's impressive to watch this guy hit golf balls.
That's awesome. It just kind of goes to show that, he's an athlete at the bottom line. I mean, when you grow up and you kind of teach yourself how to play a game, no matter what game it is, and you can do all those different things, it shows that you grew up playing, not just working on instruction, but trying to figure out how to hit those little things and how to do different things and playing against your friends and stuff like that. So they always say, the athletes are the ones that rise to the top in this sport, which apparently he is.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. Actually, I wouldn't mind touching on that. So last week, we were in the trailer and Kevin Chappell was in there working out with Graham. And Graham looked over at Kevin and said, if I had your legs, I'd be playing in the NHL right now. Because Graham obviously grew up playing hockey from Saskatchewan in Canada, but his build wasn't really designed to compete with the big boys out in that sport, even though from a skill standpoint, he was very good. So what's happening is back then, guys played different sports, multiple sports, playing golf, playing hockey, playing soccer, lacrosse, a lot of different sports with the guys who are out on tour right now. I get so many juniors contacting me whose parents have taken them out of other sports at the age of 7, 8, 9 to completely dive into golf 100%. And I honestly think that's a massive mistake. And I understand that parents are afraid that their kids are going to get hurt, but from a physical skill set development standpoint, I really think we're missing the boat on that. And I think a lot of players are going to suffer moving forward, either through burnout, injury development. There's so many things that I just don't agree with that concept.
I couldn't agree with you more. There's so many different debates on, when do you start to specialize, what age, but I agree. I mean, I grew up playing a lot of soccer, but I played pretty much everything, basketball, baseball, whatever season it was is pretty much what we were playing. But now it seems like if you're in a sport at age 6, they start kind of filtering you into that sport, and it becomes a year-round deal, and you're traveling. If you quote unquote want to be good, you got to be on these specialized teams, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And I think you're right that it's going to take away a lot of the athletic abilities of these kids, but then the burnout factor just becomes that much more
huge. It's huge. It's so many young kids that I'm seeing right now at 16, 17, 18 are tired of playing golf, tired of playing hockey. And hockey up north is no different. The parents are crazy. And these kids are playing hockey throughout the summer, throughout the winter. They're playing 2-3 different teams and practicing before school, after school, and there's just no breaks. For me, when I was growing up, I played a lot of different sports, but unfortunately, I probably took it to the other extreme. I probably played too many different sports at the same time, so I didn't have days off. There was no recovery time. we didn't understand recovery back then. And so I just kind of accumulated injuries over time. So, excuse me, I wouldn't recommend that route. But I do think, playing a lot of different sports is very important. And honestly, you work with a lot of people, a lot of athletes, and you understand what's happening. But if you look in a gym, a lot of people are doing the same movements over and over again. And I don't think that constitutes a sport. And I don't think that being in a gym and doing your 6 different exercises that a lot of people go through is the same as learning how to cut while you're playing soccer, or visualizing the field and working your visual system without even trying to work your visual system. Because so many times we're locked inside our house where we only see 6 to 8 feet away, and we're wondering why so many young kids these days are having problems with their vision. It's because we never use our visual system. It's like we have a cast on it all the time.
Right.
And so I think there's so many benefits from playing sports, and I'm totally 100% on board with utilizing the gym for what it is and how it can be beneficial. But I think if you're just doing golf and just doing the gym stuff at the age of 7, I think you're still missing out on a lot.
Yeah, you and I could probably talk on this for another 3 or 4 hours, but let's get to the most important question of the interview. Are you a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore fan?
You know what? I'm probably a Caddyshack fan more so. I'm kind of taking Adam Sandler overload. I can't take too many more of his movies. I think when it came out, I would have said Happy Gilmore because it was such a good movie, but I just can't even watch Adam Sandler these days.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of both, but pretty much you'll find yourself in either one camp or the other. So for whatever reason, I've started asking all my guests that question, and it's interesting to hear the different answers. So what has you excited for your 2015 coming up?
You know what? I got to be honest. One of the biggest things right now is for the most part, my players are all trending nicely right now. I think some of these guys could have huge years over the next little bit. So from a professional standpoint, that's always exciting to watch your guys trend into a great direction and where performance could be exceptional. But other than that, I'm kind of excited to see what happens with these guys, to be honest, moving into the Olympics. And not to say that I'm excited for the Olympic part of it, but I'm interested to see how players respond to the changes that are coming because of the Olympics, from both a testing perspective, which is going to be drastically different for those guys who have a chance of being in the Olympics, as well as all the tournaments being moved around next year and seeing how people adapt. So I'm actually interested to see the sort of primal adaptivity that these guys are going to have to do over the next 12 months for this, regardless of whether they're looking forward to playing in the Olympics or not.
Yeah. I would imagine that if you have the chance to play in the Olympics, you got to be pretty pumped up about that.
You know what? That's what I would have thought. I would be excited to play in the Olympics, but there's quite a few guys are not, and I'm not sure if that's sort of a defense mechanism, because it's if you're coming from the United States, it's going to be almost impossible to make that team.
Right.
You're going to have to be in the top 10 in the world, whereas you could be from some of the other countries and be probably 150th in the world, and you're going to get in. So I don't know whether it's some players who are just thinking, I don't have much chance to get in anyway, so I'm going to say I don't care about it. But there's been guys who are right into it, and guys out on tour are talking. They're just not. They don't appear to be that interested. But again, I don't know how much of that is truth. Because let's face it, I agree. If you come down the day where they say you're on the team, how many guys are not going to show up?
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
All right, man. Before we wrap up, any last words of advice for the audience, and then tell them where they can find you and learn more about your stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I think the biggest thing is not, especially with golf, is not to believe the first person you listen to. Like for me, what I do now is very different than what I did 10 years ago with my players, whether they're collegiate players, country club guys, or the sort of the world's elite tour players. And I'm sure you're no different. We're always trying to expand and grow our knowledge base. So I think that's one thing. And don't expect one person to know everything. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, challenge yourself. Don't just sit on the range hitting balls. Improve yourself by getting into the gym, by working on your short game, by doing whatever else. And honestly, I think people should start working their visual system. I think that's one of the next keys in performance that we're going to see moving forward is how to train your visual system. Because a lot of guys that I see, where they think they're looking at when they get in a position and look again, they're looking completely different, you know. And I've got some buddies here down in Orlando who are working on measuring the visual system in putting, and it's amazing how many people aren't actually looking at the hole when they think they're looking at the hole, and that's why they're always hitting it right or hitting it left. It's pretty wild.
Do you have any kind of a resource that we could check out to learn a little bit more about that?
Yeah, let me just see if I can pull that up right now, actually. But for me, they can find me at either at tourcouncil.com, or pretty soon my other website that will be coming up will be achievedepth.com.
Achievedepth.com?
Yeah, that's going to be sort of the place where a lot of my relations in different areas of human performance, that's my non-golf site. That's going to be whether it's different nutritional aspects, people who are working on the neuroscience or motor patterns. That's where all that's going to be housed. And I'm really excited for that part of it, actually, because that's where I'm going to have to challenge myself to grow and develop a little bit. And I can't believe I can't pull up this guy's info here.
We'll tell you what, you can just shoot that over to me. I'll put it in the show notes and make sure that I highlight that, you know, we've got a resource for some visual stuff.
Yeah, check this out, because this is very interesting stuff.
All right, Doc. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you for the time spent. I know that the listeners have gotten a lot of info out of today's session. So once again, thanks for coming on the 18 Strong podcast.
No problem, Jeff. You guys are doing great work, bud.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Dr. Craig Davies, giving us a little glimpse of what it's like to live on tour and, you know, what the guys are going through. And yes, I know there's a lot of the glitz and glamour and big money prizes and fancy cars and stuff like that, but, you know, there are some different challenges that these guys go through as far as being able to stay healthy and eating well. I mean, think of how hard it is when you're on the road traveling to make good choices at different restaurants, and, you know, when you're not sleeping in a good bed, how easy it is to skip your workouts. I mean, think about the opportunities that these guys have with, you know, the food and stuff like that, and the fancy dinners where they could make a lot of bad choices, and it would be very easy to get off track and off schedule, and sleep can be crappy and all that good stuff. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunities for excuses to come up, but as Dr. Craig Davies tells us, you know, these guys work very hard. They are professionals. They do what they need to do to get the job done. So again, I appreciate all of you guys. Please spread the word of the 18 Strong podcast. Help us get the word out there. We always love reviews on iTunes. If you haven't had a chance to go over to iTunes and give us a review, I promise to continue to bring great guests. We've got some awesome guests coming up in the very near future. So if you need any more information on 18 Strong, go over to 18strong.com and check us out there. Otherwise, for the time being, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.